So you decide to go racing, and then there's a big wreck on the first lap and it ruins your race. So what happened? I'm going to show you some tricks and tips to try and get through the first lap so you can finish your race. Okay, first up is corner one. How do you get through corner one? There's really two tips to get through corner one. First, don't be greedy. Don't go for a spot that doesn't actually exist or that's marginal at best. Just try to survive corner one. So just like we said, don't get greedy on corner one. These guys cluster up and go 3 wide into the first corner. And you can see here it doesn't really work out. It's really difficult to maintain spacing 3 wide through corners. Tip number 2, professionals will brake because you're coming in at a much lower speed. You can brake a lot later than you normally would to get into that corner, but you don't know your grip. You don't know how your tires are doing. It takes a lot of practice to get familiar with that first corner kind of cold turkey braking point. That's a kind of for professional racers. For the vast majority of amateur racers, I strongly recommend you brake where you normally are, where your normal braking point would be for that corner, but brake at half your brake pressure. Just getting on the brakes with just a little bit of brake pressure, it does a couple of things. It throws your brake lights on. It tells the people around you you're slowing down, and it allows you to gauge your traction, and you can really get into that corner and hit your brake pedal harder at the last half of your braking zone and just really gentle on the front half of your braking zone. Here we use a normal brake point to get into corner one. You can see I go into brakes fairly easy and then ramp up my brake pressure as I get more comfortable and confident with what's going on around me. I hardly lose any ground on the people around me, and I have tons of margin in case I needed to hit the brakes extra hard. Okay, so you survived corner one. You're in good shape. Now we're into corner two. The third tip I have for this tutorial is brake a little earlier than you think when you're following a car very closely. The car in front, you don't know if he's going to brake a little early. You don't know if there's maybe something happening even in front of him. You want to get on your brakes just a little bit earlier than you normally would, and just gentle, because all you're trying to do is have your foot on the pedal and throw your brake lights on for the people behind you and get ready. So as soon as that guy in front of you is braking, you're there on the pedal yourself. You're not having to switch pedals from gas to brake. You're already on the brake. You're already in that deceleration mode. Your weight is already transferred on the vehicle, and all you got to do is increase the brake pressure to actually threshold brake. Here you can see the Mercedes doesn't brake early enough and runs into the back of the other vehicle. This is extremely avoidable, and all you have to do is just be prepared to brake. And the best way to be prepared to brake is before you think you need to, move your foot onto the brake pedal and actually start applying just a little bit of brake pressure before you need to slow down, to throw your lights on, to let the people around you know you're going to be slowing down, and to remove as much delay as possible for your reaction time. For when the car in front actually hits his brake, you can be immediately on your brake. If you find yourself in the lead, you earn that spot by being the fastest on the track, so just drive your race. You don't need to drive defensively, just go. Pull out in front and get away from everybody. Tip number 5. Try to avoid driving side by side, and if you find yourself in that situation, give lots of extra room. The first couple laps, your car's coming up to temperature, the track grip is still, you're figuring it out, and there's just so much more room for error. You need to make sure you have extra room just in case the driver beside you makes a small mistake. Here you can see on corner entry, the driver puts his nose in and relies and trusts the fact the other driver is going to provide room. That's a pretty risky move on the first lap where everyone's trying to figure out their cars. Here you can see the inside driver couldn't hold his nose, and the outside driver didn't give as much room as he could have. So both cars here were racing aggressively in the first couple of laps. Here's an example that I did, the same corner, literally just a few car lengths behind the previous example, but I made a couple of differences, and I'll show you what those differences are. Entering into the corner, I didn't actually go side by side or alongside the other car because I wasn't sure whether or not he was going to give room or if he had his car fully under control. I'm not familiar with this driver. So what I did do is tuck my nose in just a little bit, just so the spotter would actually throw a call out saying there's a car on the inside. You know, in real life, you would just basically use the mirrors. You would try to occupy the driver's mirrors. So he would look in his mirrors and see all of your front grille. And the goal there is not to actually initiate the pass. The goal is to communicate to the other driver, you're right there and you're online and you're on his inside, and hoping that he's going to try and leave some racing room. And once he leaves racing room, you can then make the judgment call as to whether you enter into that space or not. Here you can see I tucked my nose into the quarter panel of the car just for the purpose of triggering the spotter and letting that driver know I'm there. At this point I could have easily backed out, but fortunately he went a little wide and I took advantage of the space. And you can see we went through that corner with almost a full car width between us. After you've raced side by side for 5 or 6 laps, you kind of understand each other. You know where he's stronger than you, where you're stronger than him. You can see how well he's holding his line and whether you can trust putting your car next to his. But on the first couple laps, you don't know anything. You don't know what's going to happen. So don't put your car right beside somebody. Instead, communicate you're going to be there and see how they react. And after they've made a reaction, now you can put your car somewhere and now you can actually leverage that reaction. Tip number 6, look down the road. You can't just watch the guy in front of you, you got to look 3 or 4 car lengths ahead. Here's an example of a Constantine, and then again, this is on the first lap. The black Audi doesn't brake early like we discussed in tip 3 and taps the back end of the blue Audi. Well, this sends off a chain reaction where the following 3 cars all run into the back of each other. You can look at this from 2 cars back and you can see the incident happening right about here. There is time you can actually hit the brakes and take evasive action here. Tip number 7, don't be afraid to hit the grass. Stuff happens. People lose control of their cars and you got to get around it. And just hitting the brakes sometimes isn't always an option. Go wide and save your car. This driver makes a mistake, gets on the marbles and totally loses his car and spins out into the racing line. Here you can see all the other drivers do a relatively good attempt of trying to get around him. And you can see everybody hitting the grass. So there's 7 tips, 7 things that I see happen all the time on the first lap, and with practice and paying attention to these 7 things, it's going to improve your odds of getting through the first lap by a factor of lots. I can't remember the last time I got wiped out in the first lap. It's been months. So best of luck to you guys. Hopefully this video helped you out, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.